Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood alone in the center of the Great Hall. The room was bigger than any building on Earth. Its walls stretched upward into darkness, and strange lights floated in the air like frozen stars. She was a small woman in a simple black uniform, but she stood straight and proud. Around her sat the Council of 12. These were the rulers of the galaxy. They came from species that had traveled between stars when humans still lived in caves. They had built empires that stretched across thousands of worlds. To them, humanity was nothing. Humans were children who had only learned to leave their planet 200 years ago. The Council called them the infant species. Elena looked at each of the 12 beings. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange that her mind could barely understand what she was seeing. There was a creature made entirely of living crystal. Another was a cloud of glowing gas contained in a special suit. A third had too many eyes and not enough face. The largest of them all was Keth Voran, the Archon of the Velix Dominion. He was made of dark purple crystal, and he stood 3 meters tall. Light bent strangely around him. When he moved, he made a sound like breaking glass. He was the most powerful being in the known galaxy, and he looked at Elena the way a man might look at an insect. Elena had prepared for this moment her entire life. She had studied every known language. She had learned the customs of 100 species. She knew that this moment would decide the future of her people. 8 billion humans on Earth and another 2 billion in the colonies were waiting to hear what would happen. She began to speak. "Honored members of the Council," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "I come before you as the voice of humanity. We are a young species. We know this. We have much to learn from the great civilizations gathered here today." She paused and looked around the room. Some of the Council members seemed bored. Others watched her with cold curiosity. Keth Voran had not moved at all. "Earth wishes to join the Galactic Accord," Elena continued. "We ask for nothing more than what any member species receives: trade rights, mutual protection, a voice in this great assembly. In return, we offer our friendship, our creativity, and our willingness to work alongside you." She took a breath. This was the important part. "We do not wish to be anyone's servants. We do not wish to be anyone's protectorate. We come as equals, ready to prove our worth through our actions." The hall was silent. Elena could hear her own heartbeat. Then Keth Voran moved. The sound of his crystal body shifting echoed through the chamber. He rose from his throne and looked down at her. His eyes were like holes in reality, dark and empty and ancient. "The Council has already discussed your petition," he said. His voice was like thunder filtered through ice. "We have watched your species for many years. You spread too quickly. You adapt too easily. You do not know your place in the natural order." Elena felt her heart grow cold, but she kept her face calm. "Archon, I assure you that humanity means no threat to..." Silence. The word hit her like a physical force. "I am not finished." Keth Voran stepped closer. The other Council members watched with expressions she could not read. "Your petition is denied," he said. "Furthermore, the Council has decided that humanity must be contained. You will return to your birth system. You will abandon your colonies. You will dismantle your military forces. You will accept permanent quarantine." Elena's mind raced. This was worse than anything they had prepared for. "Archon, with respect, we cannot simply..." "You misunderstand," Keth Voran interrupted. "This is not a negotiation. This is a sentence. Humanity will comply, or humanity will be erased from existence." Elena stood her ground. She had faced death before. She had survived the border wars. She had walked through fire to reach this moment. She would not show fear. "I will return to Earth," she said carefully, "and I will deliver your message to my government. But I must tell you, Archon, that humanity will not simply... You will not return to Earth." The words hung in the air. Elena saw movement at the edge of her vision. Guards were approaching. Crystal soldiers, servants of the Velix Dominion. They carried weapons that glowed with strange light. "What is the meaning of this?" Elena demanded. "I am a diplomatic envoy. I carry protected status under your own laws." Keth Voran made a sound that might have been laughter. It was an ugly sound, like stones grinding together. "Our laws apply to civilized species," he said. "You are not civilized. You are vermin who have crawled out of your nest. And vermin must be shown their place." He raised one crystalline hand. "Let this serve as a message to your people. Let them see what happens to those who forget their station." Elena understood then. She understood that she had never had a chance. The council had decided to kill her before she ever arrived. This whole meeting had been theater, designed to create an excuse for what came next. She thought of her husband Marcus, waiting on Earth. She thought of her daughter, just 3 years old. She thought of all the hopes and dreams that humanity had placed on her shoulders. She did not beg. She did not run. She stood straight and looked Keth Voran in the eye. "You are making a terrible mistake," she said quietly. "You do not know what you are about to awaken." Keth Voran gestured to his guards. "Kill her." The crystal shard hit her chest before she could speak again. It was cold. So cold. Colder than anything she had ever felt. She looked down and saw purple crystal growing from the wound, spreading across her body like frost on a window. She fell. Her blood, red and human, spread across the white floor of the council chamber. Some of the council members turned away. Others watched with grim satisfaction. Keth Voran stepped over her body like it was garbage. "Destroy her ship as well," he ordered. "Let no word of this reach Earth until we are ready to deliver our ultimatum." His guards hurried to obey. But Keth Voran had made a mistake. A terrible, fatal mistake. He did not know about the small device implanted at the base of Elena's skull. It was called a quantum witness. It was connected to Earth through means that the elder races had never discovered, because they had never thought to look for such a thing. They believed they understood all of humanity's technology. They were wrong. The quantum witness had recorded everything, every word, every image, every moment of Elena's death, and it had transmitted all of it to Earth in real time, faster than light, undetectable and unstoppable. 8 billion humans watched their ambassador die. 8 billion humans saw the contempt in Keth Voran's eyes. 8 billion humans heard him call them vermin. In Geneva, in the headquarters of United Earth Command, a room full of generals and admirals watched in frozen horror. President Adaora Okonkwo stood among them, her hands clenched into fists. On the screen, Elena Vasquez lay dead on an alien floor, murdered under a flag of truce. The silence in the room was absolute. Then President Okonkwo spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a world's fury. "They want to see what humanity is capable of. Very well. We will show them." She turned to face her military commanders. "Prepare the Annihilation Protocol. Across the world, across all the colonies of humanity." A message began to spread. It moved through secret channels that no alien had ever detected. It reached ships hidden in the dark between stars. It woke weapons that had slept for decades. The infant species had been slapped. Now the infant was going to show the galaxy what human children were made of. Admiral Marcus Chen had watched his wife die 117 times. Each time, he saw the crystal shard enter her chest. Each time, he saw her fall. Each time, he heard Keth Voran call humanity vermin. He sat alone in his office at United Earth Command in Geneva. The lights were off. The only glow came from the holographic screen that played Elena's final moments on an endless loop. His coffee had gone cold hours ago. His uniform was wrinkled. He had not slept in 3 days. On his desk sat a photograph of Elena and their daughter Lily. They were laughing at something he could not remember. It had been taken just 2 months ago. Before Elena left for the council chambers, she had promised to return safely. She had promised that everything would be fine. She had been wrong. A soft knock came at his door. Admiral Chen did not move. The door opened anyway. President Adaora Okonkwo stepped inside. She was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. She had led humanity through the colony rebellions and the resource wars. She had buried more soldiers than she could count, but she had never faced anything like this. "Marcus," she said softly. "The Joint Chiefs are waiting." He did not answer. She walked across the room and sat down across from him. For a long moment, she said nothing. She simply watched him, waiting. Finally, Marcus spoke. His voice was rough from disuse. "They killed her because she asked to be treated as an equal. That was her crime. She wanted humanity to have a seat at the table. I know. They called us vermin, Adaora. They killed her like she was nothing. I know." Marcus looked at her. His eyes were red, but they were dry. He had no more tears left. "What are we going to do about it?" President Okonkwo stood. She walked to the window and looked out at the city of Geneva. Millions of people lived their lives below, unaware that the world was about to change forever. "The council has sent their demands," she said. "They want us to abandon our colonies, dismantle our fleet, accept permanent quarantine in the Sol system. They give us 30 days to comply, and if we refuse, they promise extinction." Marcus laughed. It was not a happy sound. "They really think they can destroy us. They think we are weak. They think we are children," Okonkwo said. "They have been watching our public fleet, our public technology, our public history. They see a young species that crawled into space just 2 centuries ago. They see primitives with simple ships and basic weapons." She turned to face him. "They do not know about Project Prometheus." Marcus felt something stir in his chest. Something cold and hard and ancient. It was the same feeling his ancestors had felt before every great battle in human history. It was the feeling of a species that had survived ice ages and plagues and world wars. A species that had nearly destroyed itself a dozen times but always found a way to continue. "You are going to activate it?" he said. It was not a question. "The Council has given us no choice. They murdered our ambassador. They threatened our extinction. They expect us to bow down like good little children and accept our punishment." She smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "They are about to learn why humanity survived when so many other species on Earth did not." They walked together to the war room. It was buried deep beneath Geneva, protected by layers of rock and metal and energy shields. The room was filled with the most powerful military minds on Earth, generals and admirals from every nation, scientists and strategists and specialists in 100 fields of war. They all stood when President Okonkwo entered. "Sit down," she said. "We have work to do." She walked to the central display and placed her palm on a scanner. The holographic map of known space flickered and changed. Suddenly, there were new markers everywhere, ships that had never appeared on any record, bases hidden in asteroid fields, weapons platforms disguised as debris. General Yuki Tanaka leaned forward. She was the commander of Earth's secret fleet, a position that did not officially exist. "Project Prometheus has been operational for 170 years, she said. "Since the day of first contact, we have been preparing for this moment. Every alien scan of our technology was carefully controlled. Every diplomatic meeting was monitored for signs of hostility. Every species in the galaxy was evaluated as a potential threat." Admiral Chen stared at the map. There were so many hidden assets, so many secret weapons, an entire shadow military that the galaxy had never suspected. "How is this possible?" he asked. "How did we hide all of this?" General Tanaka smiled grimly. "Humanity learned long ago that the best weapon is the one your enemy does not know exists. We let them see our merchant ships and our science vessels. We let them believe we were peaceful explorers with no military ambition. Meanwhile, we built our true fleet in the spaces between stars, in the dark places where no one thought to look." President Okonkwo stepped forward. "The Annihilation Protocol is our response to existential threat. It was designed by game theorists, historians, and military strategists who studied every war humanity has ever fought. They asked one simple question: how do you fight an enemy that is older, stronger, and more numerous than you?" She looked around the room. "The answer is simple. You do not fight them. You destroy them. Completely. Utterly. So thoroughly that no other enemy will ever consider attacking you again." She pressed another button. New data filled the screens. Attack plans, target lists, casualty projections. Phase 1 is decapitation. We eliminate their leadership before they know the war has begun. Every council member who voted for Elena's death, every military commander in their chain of command, every political leader who supported the decision, General Tanaka continued. Phase 2 is infrastructure denial. We destroy their ability to fight. Shipyards, fuel depots, communication networks, their vast fleets become useless when they cannot refuel, cannot coordinate, cannot receive orders. Phase 3 is the message, President Okonkwo said. We tell the galaxy what we have done and why. We offer peace to those who did not attack us. We promise total destruction to those who did. Admiral Chen studied the plans. They were brutal. They were merciless. They would kill millions, perhaps billions of beings across the galaxy. But he thought of Elena lying dead on that white floor. He thought of Keth Varan calling humanity vermin. He thought of his daughter Lily, who would never see her mother again. What do you need from me? He asked. President Okonkwo met his eyes. I need you to command the First Strike Fleet. I need you to be the sword that humanity drives into the heart of the Council. I need you to show them what happens when they murder one of us. Marcus Chen stood. He straightened his uniform. He looked at the faces around him, men and women who were ready to do terrible things to protect their species. Then let us begin. President Okonkwo nodded. She turned to a communications officer. Send the signal. Authorization code Omega 77. The officer's hands trembled slightly as he typed. He knew what those words meant. Everyone in the room knew. Signal sent, Madam President. Across human space, hidden receivers came alive. Secret bases powered up. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives received their orders. Ships that had never been registered began their journey toward enemy space. The galaxy had 30 days of peace remaining. It would be the last peace some species would ever know. In the council chambers, Keth Voran received word that the human diplomatic vessel had been destroyed. He felt satisfied. The vermin had been shown their place. Soon they would surrender, and the natural order would be restored. He had no idea that humanity's true fleet was already moving toward him. He would not learn of his mistake until it was far too late. The first strike came without warning. It came from the dark spaces between stars, from places where the elder races never thought to look. It came with a speed and fury that the galaxy had never seen. Keth Voran was giving a victory speech on Velix Prime when his world ended. He stood before a crowd of millions, his crystal body gleaming in the light of 3 suns. Behind him floated a massive holographic image of Ambassador Vasquez, dying on the council floor. The crowd cheered every time the recording played. The humans thought they could challenge our authority, Keth Voran announced. They thought their primitive ambition would be enough to earn them a place among the stars. They were wrong. They are vermin, and vermin must be taught their place. The crowd roared its approval. Keth Voran raised his arms to bask in their worship. He did not notice the tiny flash of light in the sky above. He did not see the object falling toward his planet at nearly half the speed of light. The kinetic impactor was simple. It was just a rod of solid tungsten, no bigger than a small vehicle. But when something that size hits a planet at that speed, it carries more energy than a nuclear weapon. The rod punched through Velix Prime's orbital shields like they were made of paper. The shields were designed to stop ships and missiles. They were not designed to stop something moving so fast that it could not even be detected until it was too late. The impact vaporized the capital city in an instant. Keth Voran, the most powerful being in the galaxy, ceased to exist before he even knew something was wrong. The crowd, the buildings, the monument to Velix superiority, all of it became light and heat and ash. 17 more impactors followed in the next 60 seconds. They struck military bases, government centers, and communication hubs across the planet. When the bombardment ended, Velix Prime was a wounded world, its leadership destroyed, its military in chaos. But Velix Prime was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, similar attacks were happening simultaneously. The Consortium of Whispers, a species of psychic manipulators who had secretly pushed for humanity's destruction, found their homeworld under assault by ships that appeared from nowhere. Their mental powers were useless against combat drones piloted by uploaded human minds. They could not read thoughts that existed only as computer code. The Morthak Combine, a race of conquering warriors who had laughed the loudest at the idea of human resistance, discovered that their defensive fleet had been poisoned. Human agents had spent decades infiltrating their shipyards, installing tiny devices that would disable their vessels at a signal. The proud Morthak watched helplessly as their ships lost power and drifted into the void. The Etherian Republic, whose philosophers had argued that humanity should be enslaved for their own good, found their leaders dead from an unknown toxin. Human operatives had replaced their food supplies with perfect copies that contained slow-acting poison. By the time anyone noticed, the entire government was gone. Admiral Marcus Chen commanded the first strike fleet from the bridge of the UES Vengeance. He watched the reports come in from across the galaxy. Everywhere, the Council's forces were dying. Everywhere, humanity's hidden strength was being revealed. He felt no joy. He felt no satisfaction. He only felt cold. Status report, he ordered. His tactical officer responded quickly. Phase 1 is 97% complete, Admiral. All primary targets have been neutralized. Keth Voran is confirmed dead. 8 of the 12 council members have been killed. The remaining 4 are in hiding. And their fleets? Scattered and confused. Our infrastructure attacks have disabled most of their communication networks. They cannot coordinate a response. Chen nodded. Begin Phase 2. I want their shipyards burning within the hour. The Vengeance and its sister ships moved deeper into enemy space. They targeted the industrial heart of the Council's power, the massive construction facilities that built their warships, the fuel refineries that powered their fleets, the relay stations that allowed them to communicate across light years. One by one, these targets vanished in fire. The elder races had built their civilization on the assumption that no one would ever challenge them. Their defenses were designed to intimidate, not to fight. They had not faced a real war in millions of years. They had forgotten what war was. Humanity had not forgotten. Humanity had spent its entire existence at war. War against nature, war against disease, war against itself. Humans had learned lessons that the elder races had never needed to learn. The most important lesson was this: when you fight to win. Completely. Totally. Without mercy or hesitation. Phase 3 began at the end of the first week. A message was broadcast to every inhabited world in the galaxy. It used frequencies that the Council had never discovered, reaching places that their networks could not touch. The message was simple and clear. The face of President Adaora Okonkwo appeared on every screen. Citizens of the galaxy, she said. 1 week ago, the Galactic Council murdered our ambassador. She was killed under a flag of truce, murdered for asking to be treated as an equal. The Council then threatened to exterminate our entire species. The recording of Elena Vasquez's death played behind her. You have seen what happened next. You have watched your leaders fall. You have seen your fleets burn. You have witnessed the beginning of the Council's end. Her expression hardened. To those species who did not participate in this crime, you have nothing to fear from humanity. Remain neutral, and we will not touch your worlds or your people. We have no quarrel with those who have done us no harm. Her voice grew cold. But to those who raised their hands against us, who cheered for our extinction, who called us vermin and laughed as our ambassador died, there will be no negotiation. There will be no peace. There will be no mercy. You chose to make war on humanity. Now you will learn what that means. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched in stunned silence. The infant species had done the impossible. In 7 days, they had destroyed the most powerful coalition in known space. They had killed rulers who had reigned for millions of years. They had shattered fleets that had been thought invincible. And they were not finished. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Vengeance and looked at the burning remains of a Velix supply depot. His face was blank. His eyes were empty. He was doing what needed to be done, but a part of him was dying with every order he gave. He thought of Elena. He wondered if she would be proud of him or horrified by what he had become. He decided it did not matter. The galaxy had killed his wife. The galaxy had threatened his daughter. The galaxy would pay the price. His communications officer approached nervously. Admiral, we are receiving surrender offers from several minor species. They wish to negotiate. Accept their surrender, Chen said. We do not punish the innocent, but inform them that any species that offers aid to Council forces will be treated as an enemy. Yes, Admiral. Chen turned back to the viewport. Stars burned in the darkness, beautiful and cold. Somewhere out there, the survivors of the Council were trying to organize a response. They were gathering their remaining forces, looking for allies, preparing for a counterattack. They did not understand yet. They still thought this was a war they could win. They were wrong. Humanity had spent 200 years preparing for this moment. They had weapons the Council had never imagined. They had strategies the elder races could not comprehend. They had the fury of a species that had been pushed too far. The first week was just the beginning. The true destruction was still to come. The elder races had ruled the galaxy for longer than humanity had existed. They had built empires that stretched across thousands of stars. They had crushed every challenge to their power. They believed themselves to be the masters of creation. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Velix Dominion was the first to fall completely. With Kethvaran dead and their capital in ruins, the remaining Velix commanders fought among themselves for power. Some wanted to surrender. Others demanded vengeance. They could not agree on anything except hatred for the humans who had hurt them. Their division made them easy targets. Admiral Chen split his fleet into dozens of smaller groups. These wolf packs, as the soldiers called them, hunted Velix warships across the stars. The Velix vessels were larger and more powerful, but they were alone and confused. Human ships attacked in coordinated swarms. striking from multiple directions at once. A Velix battlecruiser could destroy a human frigate with ease. But 10 frigates attacking together from different angles could tear a battlecruiser apart before it could respond. The mathematics of war had changed. The Velix did not understand this until it was too late. Commander Zethro was one of the last great Velix warriors. He commanded a fleet of 30 ships, the largest surviving Velix force. He believed he could turn the tide of the war if he could destroy the human command ship. He tracked the Vengeance to a system on the edge of Velix space. His sensors showed only a handful of human vessels defending it. He thought he saw an opportunity. All ships, attack formation, Zethro ordered. We will crush these vermin and mount their admiral's skull on my bridge. His fleet advanced. The human ships began to retreat. Zethro felt a surge of triumph. The humans were afraid. They were running. Then his sensors screamed warnings. Ships appeared from behind asteroids, from inside gas clouds, from the dark spaces where nothing should exist. Dozens of human vessels, hidden and waiting. They had led him into a trap. It was an ambush. Zethro realized. All along, it was an ambush. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it ended, Zethro's flagship drifted broken in space. He sat alone on his shattered bridge, surrounded by the bodies of his crew. A human marine team boarded his vessel. They moved through the corridors with brutal efficiency, killing anyone who resisted. When they reached the bridge, Zethro waited for death. Instead, a human soldier removed his helmet. It was a young man with cold eyes. "You are Zethro," the soldier said. It was not a question. "I am. Kill me and be done with it." The soldier shook his head. "We are not going to kill you. We are going to release you." Zethro did not understand. "What? We are going to let you go. We want you to return to your people and tell them what happened here. Tell them about the trap. Tell them about the slaughter. Tell them that there is no battle they can win, no strategy that will save them." The soldier leaned closer. "Tell them that the only way their species survives is surrender. Complete, unconditional surrender. If they keep fighting, we will hunt them to the last individual. We will burn every world they touch. We will erase them from history so completely that no one will even remember they existed." He straightened up. "You have 3 days. Use them wisely." Zethro was put on a small transport and released. He flew back to the last Velix stronghold and delivered his message. 3 days later, the Velix Dominion surrendered unconditionally. But the war was not over. The consortium of Whispers refused to accept defeat. They were a species of psychic beings who believed themselves superior to all physical life. They retreated to their inner worlds and prepared for a final stand. "The humans cannot touch us," their leaders declared. "Our mental powers will destroy any soldier who approaches. We will reach into their minds and turn them into puppets." They were confident. They were arrogant. They were very, very wrong. The human attack came not from soldiers, but from machines. Thousands of combat drones descended on the consortium homeworld. Each drone was piloted by an uploaded human mind, a consciousness that had been transferred from a biological brain to a computer core. The consortium's psychic powers could affect biological minds. They could not affect software. The drones swept through consortium space like a cleansing fire. They destroyed military bases and government buildings. They targeted the psychic amplifiers that the consortium used to project their mental powers. Without these amplifiers, the consortium was helpless. Their leaders tried to flee. Human operatives were waiting for them at every escape route. One by one, the masters of the consortium were captured and brought before Admiral Chen. "You believed you were gods," Chen told them. "You believed you could reach into any mind and take control. Now you will spend the rest of your existence in prison cells designed to block your powers. You will be alone with your thoughts forever." He turned away. "Perhaps that will give you time to think about what you have done." Other species watched these events with growing terror. They had believed the Council was invincible. They had believed humanity could never challenge the established order. Now they saw empires falling like dominoes. Some species that had been neutral began to offer support to Council remnants. They hoped that together, they might stop the human advance. They arranged a secret meeting on a hidden station to form an alliance. A human operative was waiting for them. His name was Agent 7. No one knew his real identity. He sat alone in the conference room as the delegates arrived. When they saw him, they froze in shock. "Please, sit down," Agent 7 said politely. "I have a message for you." "How did you find us?" one of the delegates demanded. This location was secret. There are no secrets from humanity. Not anymore. Agent 7 smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. We know the name of every being in this room. We know the location of their home worlds, their families, their most sacred places. He stood and walked slowly around the table. You came here to form an alliance against us. That would be unwise. We do not want to fight you. We have no quarrel with species that have done us no harm, but if you join forces with the Council remnants, you will share their fate. He stopped and looked at each of them in turn. Let me be clear. This is not a threat. This is simply the truth. We can reach anywhere in the galaxy. We can strike any target at any time. The only reason your worlds still exist is because you have not given us a reason to destroy them. He walked toward the door. Go home. Hug your children. Tell your leaders that neutrality is the only path to survival. The war is almost over. Do not make the mistake of choosing the losing side. He left. The delegates looked at each other in silence. Then, one by one, they stood and walked away. The alliance was never formed. By the end of the first month, the Council's major powers had been destroyed or neutralized. The Velix Dominion had surrendered. The consortium of Whispers had been conquered. The Morthak Combine had been shattered. The Etherian Republic had collapsed into civil war. Only scattered remnants remained, hiding in the dark corners of the galaxy. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Vengeance and looked at the star map. So much of it was now under human control or influence. The infant species had grown up in the space of weeks. His executive officer approached. Admiral, we have located the last 4 council members. They are hiding on a neutral world, demanding protection. Chen's expression did not change. Prepare a diplomatic team. We will give them one chance to surrender and face trial for Ambassador Vasquez's murder. If they refuse, he did not need to finish the sentence. The executive officer nodded and left to carry out the orders. Chen turned back to the viewport. The stars were the same as they had always been. Cold, distant, beautiful, but everything else had changed. Humanity was no longer the infant species. Humanity was something else entirely, something that the galaxy had never seen before and would never forget. The war was almost over. The new order was about to begin. 1 year had passed since Ambassador Elena Vasquez died on the floor of the council chambers. 1 year since humanity had been called vermin. 1 year since the Annihilation Protocol had burned its way across the stars. The galaxy was a different place now. The old council chambers on Vethera Prime had been rebuilt. The blood-stained floor where Elena had fallen was now covered by a memorial, a circle of white stone inscribed with her final words in every language of every species in the galaxy. Visitors came from across the stars to see it. They stood in silence and remembered what had happened here. Above the memorial, the chambers themselves had been transformed. Where 12 thrones had once dominated the room, there were now 20 seats arranged in a circle. No throne was higher than any other. No species held special power or privilege. This was the new Galactic Assembly. Marcus Chen stood at the center of the circle. He wore the uniform of the United Earth Navy, decorated with medals he had never wanted to earn. His hair had gone gray in the year since Elena's death. His eyes held a weariness that would never fully fade. But he stood straight and strong as he addressed the assembled delegates. 1 year ago, humanity came to this place with open hands. We asked for nothing more than equality, the right to be treated as fellow beings rather than servants or slaves. We were answered with murder. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. What followed was not something we wanted. The destruction, the death, the burning of worlds, these were not acts of conquest. They were consequences. The Council taught the galaxy that might makes right, that the strong may do whatever they wish to the weak. We simply proved that we were not as weak as they believed. He looked around at the delegates. Some were survivors of the old regime. Others represented species that had been too small and weak to have a voice before the war. All of them watched him with a mixture of fear and respect. Today, we create something new. The Galactic Assembly will be governed by principles that humanity learned through centuries of suffering. Sovereignty, no species may rule another without consent. Equality, all voices matter, not just the loudest. Justice, there are laws that even the powerful must obey. He stepped back and gestured to President Okonkwo, who rose from her seat. These principles are not gifts from humanity to the galaxy, she said. They are the price of peace. Any species that violates them will face consequences. We have proven that we can reach anywhere, strike anyone, destroy anything. We pray that we never have to prove it again." She looked at the delegates with eyes that had seen too much death. "The war is over. The old order is gone. What comes next is up to all of us. We can build a galaxy of cooperation and mutual respect, or we can repeat the mistakes of the past and watch everything burn again." She sat down. The assembly voted to accept the new charter that day. It was not a close vote. The delegates had seen what happened to those who opposed humanity. They had no desire to share that fate, but there was something else in the room that day. Something beyond fear. Some of the delegates, especially those from smaller species who had suffered under council rule, seemed genuinely hopeful. For the first time in millions of years, they had a voice. They had rights. They had protection. Maybe humanity had not just conquered the galaxy. Maybe they had freed it. After the ceremony, Marcus Chen walked alone through the gardens of Vithara Prime. The planet had recovered from the initial attacks. New growth covered the scars of war. Life continued, as it always did. He stopped at a small pond and watched alien fish swim beneath the surface. They were beautiful, with scales that shimmered in colors that human eyes could barely perceive. Elena would have loved them. She had always been fascinated by alien life. "She would be proud of you." Chen turned. President Okonkwo stood behind him, her ceremonial robes exchanged for a simple suit. "Would she?" he asked. "I killed millions to avenge her. I burned worlds. I became the monster that the council feared we were." Okonkwo walked to stand beside him. For a long moment, she said nothing. "I used to wonder the same thing," she finally said. "Every soldier I sent to die, every order I gave, every terrible choice I made, I wondered if there was another way. If we could have achieved peace without war." She shook her head. "But then I remember Kethvaran's words. He called us vermin. He killed Elena because she asked to be treated as an equal. He was going to exterminate our entire species because we refused to be slaves. There was no negotiation possible, no compromise he would accept. The only language he understood was force." She looked at Chen. Elena knew this. That is why her last words were a warning, not a plea. She knew what the council was. She knew what would happen. And I think, if she could see what you have built in her name, this assembly, this new order, this chance for real peace, she would say that it was worth the cost. Chen did not respond. He was not sure he believed her. He was not sure he would ever believe her, but he nodded anyway. They stood together in silence as the sun set over the gardens of Vithara Prime. Far away, on Earth, the celebrations were ending. Humanity had won its war. They were no longer the infant species, the vermin, the primitives, to be crushed and conquered. They were the most powerful force in the galaxy. But in homes across the planet, families gathered to remember those who had been lost, soldiers who had died in the war, colonists who had been caught in the crossfire. Elena Vasquez, who had given her life trying to find peace. In Geneva, little Lily Chen stood with her grandmother before a wall covered in photographs. Each photograph showed a person who had died in the war. There were thousands of them, stretching as far as she could see. "Which one is Mommy?" Lily asked. Her grandmother led her to a photograph near the center of the wall. It showed Elena smiling, her uniform crisp, her eyes bright with hope. "This is your mother," her grandmother said. She was very brave. She went to talk to the aliens because she believed they could be friends. When they hurt her, your father made sure it would never happen again. Lily reached out and touched the photograph with small fingers. "Is Daddy a hero?" Her grandmother hesitated. The question was more complicated than a 3-year-old could understand. Marcus Chen had saved humanity. He had also killed more beings than any human in history. Was he a hero? A monster? Something in between? "Your father did what he had to do to protect us," she finally said. "Sometimes heroes have to do hard things, things that hurt them inside. Your father is very sad, but he loves you very much, and he made the galaxy safe for you to grow up in." Lily nodded seriously. She did not fully understand, but she accepted it the way children accept the truths that adults give them. In orbit above Earth, ships moved through the void. They were no longer hidden in the darkness between stars. They flew openly now, proudly displaying the flags of the United Earth Navy, traders and explorers and builders, carrying humanity's hopes to distant worlds. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and full of possibility. Humanity had wanted peace. They had offered friendship. They had been answered with murder and contempt, so they had taught the galaxy a lesson that would never be forgotten. They had proven that the meek did not inherit the stars. That power belonged to those who were willing to fight for their survival. That underestimating humanity was the last mistake anyone would ever make. The war was over. The dead were buried. The treaties were signed. But the galaxy would remember. For millions of years, species would tell their children about the humans, the infant race that had toppled empires and rewritten the laws of civilization. They would remember the warning that humanity had carved into the stars with fire and fury. Never start a war you are not prepared to lose. And somewhere in the garden of his home in Geneva, Marcus Chen sat alone and watched his daughter play. She laughed as she chased butterflies across the grass, innocent and joyful and completely unaware of the blood that had been spilled to give her this moment. He smiled for the first time in a year. Maybe, he thought, it really had been worth it. Maybe Elena would understand. Maybe, in time, he would learn to forgive himself. The galaxy was at peace. His daughter was safe. The future was full of possibility. It was not a happy ending, but it was an ending. And for humanity, after everything they had been through, that was enough. The stars continued to shine, as they always had and always would. And among them, humanity took its place not as children or vermin, but as equals, as survivors, as something the galaxy would never forget.